Anyway, well, let's dig into it. This is the Flipform ThinkTank. My name is JP Garcia, here today with an old buddy of mine, Michael Driver, who is the president and CEO of Iris Strategies. Yes, and it's a company you just recently launched, right?
Yeah, so back in July of 23, I left my role at L3 Harris and been doing this ever since.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, yeah. So we caught up probably last week or 2 weeks ago, just about your
Yeah.
background and how you got to this point, right? And so, one of the one of the key audience demographics that I try to help give a message to are entrepreneurs who are looking to go independent, looking to do exactly what you've done and what I've done. And you'll start a business doing services, doing consulting, professional services type stuff. So help us understand how you got to where you were able to make that switch from a W-2 job, working for a large company, several large companies,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And making that leap into independent consulting.
Well, for me, it was I have a very supportive wife, Lauren. It kind of helped me push me to that where we had been talking about me doing something like this for ages. It seems like I do enjoy the industry that I'm in. I really enjoyed the work that I was doing, but it was time for me to move on and to help other businesses utilizing the experience that I had accumulated over, it seemed, I guess now, 2 decades, which seems absurd
That's
to me
crazy, right?
to measure stuff in decades now. Um, but no, it was what was key was Lauren's support. We had been financially prepared for me to transition to another job or to start a business from scratch.
Okay.
It was, without that support, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. At least that's personally. Others have other stories of how they just figure it out, right? But no, that was the key to me.
So did you plan it out where you gave yourself a lot of runway in in the very beginning? Like you knew, okay, I'm gonna do this business, I'm gonna launch it in 6 months, kind of thing, and you had clients kind of lined up beforehand, or how did
Uh,
that all work out for you?
well, some of the work that I have done and will do, I could not perform or even talk about really while I was still employed with my current employer because um, it was not ethical, I guess, for me to pursue
Sure.
those type of conversations. So I needed to make a clean break. So then for the first 6 months, it was me building that network, getting a lot of things in place that I didn't know I needed at the time when I left in July. Also was to recalibrate myself to focus on what my plan is. Um, and then the journey started. So I would say from July to January, it was really getting everything in, and we're talking 2023 timeframe, was getting
Sure.
everything in place, focusing on my three boys, and then Lauren, getting everything ready for me to then start actually generating revenue starting in January of 24. So um, that was because a lot of these, there would be these side conversations, but I couldn't have them when I was still with L3 Harris.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are non-competes. I'm sure there's not just personal conflicts of interest, but I'm sure there were contractual things that you had to dance around before you could entertain other clients and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. It just
So
wasn't,
yeah, that makes total sense.
right. Yeah. It was just wasn't the right thing for me to do, based on what kind of work I did.
Yeah, that's cool. So now
Mhm.
January 2024 comes, you're out, you're hitting the ground running with this business.
Mhm.
What are your service offerings? What do you like to do? What type of work are you looking for? What are your specialties? Those kinds of things.
Oh, so, the specialties, doing business development for some of these smaller firms. There's a lot of defense aerospace businesses that survived the last 20, 25 years of the constant acquisition and private equity money. But they were able to thrive as a privately held business and they've been developing good products, but they're small, so they don't have the not necessarily the ability to um, interact with new customers or their current customers. They a lot of them tend to get reorders, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there a lot of these businesses are making great products, but how do you get your name out there when you're a small firm, right? It's how do you have these conversations when you're still needed back at the factory or at the office to make sure that um, the product gets out the door. A lot of these businesses need an extra set of hands. So
Okay.
what I bring is unique is uh, I can relate with the different primes or sub tier companies, interact with them on what's coming down the road, and then I can articulate the type of capabilities that these businesses had because a lot of them have some similarities to a lot of the work that I've done over the time.
Hmm.
I still am able to access that engineering mindset. So I do understand how things do work, and I understand how they got done based on how those businesses did it, and how I can
Sure.
kind of communicate that uh, with with new business. And then how do you rekindle how do you get past your existing business? So say these companies have a legacy business from a company that's been buying this widget for the last 30 years. How do you get to somebody other than their buyer that just calls and reorders and sends them invoices? Who do you talk to now? Because probably when that project started, you didn't have, Carl, whatever his, last name is, may have
Hmm.
retired. So who's the new Carl at Acme? How do you
Sure.
find them? You know,
Yeah. Okay. So
um,
is
so
it? Yeah, no, that's cool. Like, so are you doing more like outsourced business development? Like you take on that role for your clients, or are you coaching them in how to be better business develop, have better business development?
um, so I'm actually doing some of it physically for them.
Okay. Yeah.
I am building those networks. I have also provided strategic advice to a couple companies.
Sure.
I've helped build them also their networks because they're trying to bring product A into the new DoD procurement cycle, and they don't know who to talk to. They don't even know who the right
Like the process or anything like that. Yeah.
right. They don't know that certain governing bodies even exist that have to oversee approvals or qualifications, or how do you
Hmm.
get
Oh,
this
I think I
widget
just lost
on
you.
an oh, you there?
Oh no.
I can hear you.
Oh yeah, there you're back. You kind of
Okay.
you popped out and came back in, right? So um network issue. That one was a network issue, I think. But no problem. So going back to what you were saying, you were talking about that you help clients so you can sit in the business development seat for them, right? You can be their
Correct.
business developer if they need you to be. You can help them come up with strategies for how to improve their business development. You can also help them grow their network and their reach for, business development opportunities. So like those are, you know, three key buckets that you're helping people with, your clients, right?
Yep. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So, I know we shared this personally with my background. So I really been there at the three, and it was a great experience because we did everything ourselves.
Hmm.
We designed, developed, manufacture, and shipped everything out of this one little factory in Cincinnati. So we were attached. The electrodynamics was attached to Fusion and Ordnance, and we were able to do all those things. So I got a lot of experience to do everything from getting a customer complaint to dealing with contracts to get new
Hmm.
suppliers or new customers online, and then of course you navigate all the corporate pieces. So then when you get experience to some of these bigger programs, you can get exposed to those, trying to put systems together then, right? So it was a great. And then so from those experiences I found that there's a that's lacking at a lot of these companies because they don't get exposed to that necessarily, because some of the corporate education and bureaucracy, that learning through, morale will improve. The beatings will
Yeah.
continue once the morale improves. So that
Yeah.
that those lessons learned through that, over the course of my career um, have helped me navigate. And I got scar tissue on things that work and don't work when you're
Sure.
trying to do a project or run a business. So those type of experiences I can bring to them, because that also involves in the business development, because then I can talk shop with a lot of these um, uh, primes and small and mid-sized firms, because I can still speak their language, right? Because they're
Right. Yeah.
living they're living what I used to live, right? They get it, right?
Hmm.
Where a small private company can't always share those. They don't have those shared experience, because there's a lot of goodness in what they have, and they've been able to focus on the product and developing it, and they do really great work. They serve their customers. It's just they don't have all the pieces. So I'm hoping to help them grow that, because those pieces. Um, those companies need to continue to exist in the industry, because they are so vital for defense, aerospace, and just the overall economic performance. They need to continue to exist. Everybody can't be owned by five companies, I guess, is what I'm
Sure.
trying to get at.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, the smaller companies, as you would expect, right? They're more agile. They can shift to, you know, either changing requirements or changing regulations or stuff like that much more quickly than a large company, right? And I think this probably mirrors itself from your side, from the the defense and manufacturing side, also to the oil and gas where I play mostly in, right?
Oh,
It
yes.
is it is much more difficult to move when you're a very large company. We're talking, companies like in the Fortune Global 10, right? Like those level companies, it's very difficult to make changes. And so having these small players be in the market will allow these big companies to adjust much more quickly, when especially when they're buying pieces, buying commodities. Okay, we're buying
Mhm.
widget XYZ, or we're buying nuts and bolts ABC, right? For this particular part of the plant, in my case, or, part of the wing of a plane for you, or whatever it is.
Mhm. Yep.
When the requirements change, it could take somebody like L3 or Raytheon or somebody years, right? To make that change. Whereas you can get that same requirement to some of these smaller players, And I don't mean that as a pejorative. They're just smaller market cap companies. But you can get that requirement to them, and they could probably turn that around in months. You know?
Right, because they have the specialties. So, we would see things like, um, we provided some products in the case of electrodynamics that were on drawings that are 30 years old, and then so we would get these calls sometimes from these you know less experienced engineers, and they're asking us questions about how we built their part wrong, and it's like, well, hold on, you're using it incorrectly. This is our IP, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just putting our part in your product, and you're doing something as much as wiring it backwards or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
They and it's like, well, that's not right. This drawing says it's ours. I said, well, it never has been. Your drawings are incorrect. You need to change a drawing. So once you talk
Mm-hmm.
about changing drawings, and like the whole
I can
project
only
blows
imagine.
up because they don't know how to get drawings changed. I mean, it's a behemoth sometimes. It's interesting, but you're right. You get these very detailed or tweaks to the specs, and only a few firms could have done that. And now there are even less firms, and the bigger players, they don't know the nuances of why that new EMF spec changed, and their part that they bought, that they put on whatever they're building, it needs to be tweaked, and they don't know how to talk to the group that actually did it.
Yeah.
And now the downside sometimes of working the smaller firms, working with the bigger firms, is that they like to throw their weight around. So they'll
Oh,
try
sure.
to say, well, we didn't order these parts, on time, even though you told us to with your lead times. Why is my product sitting in we're trying to ship this product by the end of the quarter, and our CEO is screaming at me because you didn't ship your parts on time. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you have these very awkward conversations where you say, well, you didn't order any until yesterday. These can't be, you know, you can't just, with miracles, build these. We don't have these on the
Right.
shelf, right? No one
It's
has
just in
anything on the
time. Yeah.
shelf. Yeah, everything's just in time, which is, there's good things about it, and there's a lot of bad things about it. So, I mean, during COVID, we learned that just in time isn't always the best, because when you have
Right.
a pandemic, you don't have toilet paper on the shelf. I mean,
Right.
seems like
Well, yeah.
something that would be used, right? And then when you get
Yeah.
into the high tech stuff, you're like, you mean that comes from there? You mean it has to go through a shipping container and then get over here? You learn things you don't want to know, how sometimes the sausage is made.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, any blip in the supply chain, is a catastrophe for just in time, right?
Right.
So, and that's, but it's the good and the bad, right? You don't have to have the inventory cost at that point. You save on taxes, right? I mean, it's
Right. I mean,
April 16th, but
right,
I mean that
right,
it's a thing, but yeah, it's a trade-off for sure.
right.
And, on the bad side of that trade-off is if you do have a blip in the supply chain, um, you get smoked for weeks because you're just,
Yep.
your whole system gets backlogged.
The whole system gets backlogged. It puts extra stress on your employees, to everybody involved, because everybody wants to do a good job. It doesn't matter what they do, if they're cleaning the bathrooms or if they're in the boardroom. Everyone wants to do a good job and support their customers, right? But then when you're late, and it's really, this isn't really our fault, but we're trying to do our best, and then you just get,
Yeah.
there's no partnerships. A lot of times, you would think that it's like, if we all built individual Lego pieces, and then there's one person building it, and everybody um, has their one job. I build a 1x4, and you build a 2x2 brick, right? So we take pride in that, and we deliver it, and then we hope that we're all working together, that gets built into whatever that masterpiece will build. Now it's not like that. It's like, well, why isn't my stuff here? and then everything is uh, run with contracts and liability and work. And if you don't deliver, or if you don't, because we're a larger company and you don't like what our terms are, then we'll go to some other guy, even though they can't. That was the
Yeah.
funniest thing, is there's so many few companies that do most of these products that are out there anymore that haven't been bought up. It's like, where else are you going to go? You can't start these companies from scratch. There's a reason why some of these businesses have been around for, 40, 50, 60 years, is because they're the only one left in the game that can still do it. And they have the
Yeah.
talent still. So,
Well, and that's, and it's so funny you bring that up. One thing that I see a lot of times, and it's more with internal to companies in, the companies that I deal with more than external with vendors, but I'm sure it happens with the vendors too, is that a lot of times long-term strategy that makes sense gets wrenched up by short-term problems, right? And so, and it's one of these things where, yes, we're trying to build the best new airplane, or we're trying to, put out the best XYZ product. Doesn't matter what the product is. 5-year goal. We want to do this in the next 5 years.
yep,
Year two, you get there and you have a little budget shortfall here and there. And then
yep,
everything, strategy goes out the window. It's like, where are we going to cut costs? And you start to see things, where you lean on suppliers. One, what you're talking about. One thing that I see is that you'll have projects that have gone on, larger initiatives that gone on for 2 years, and we're, maybe 95% to the finish line, but there's a delay in something, a supplier that maybe there's a feature that gets requested, we can't deliver on time because we're waiting for the vendor to deliver
mhm,
that, and then they say, well, we're going to axe the program. Like, guys, we spent $10 million on this to date, and we only need $500,000 to get this thing over the finish line before you can realize all the value. Are we going to really cut this program to save this 500K short term and throw away this 10 million that we've already spent on it? And a lot
right,
of times that answer becomes yes. And it's like, what are we doing?
right. And then a year later, they'll try to pick it back up from where you started.
Exactly. As if you can just hit pause, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's not like that. The recovery costs, and it doesn't matter. I think this goes across industry. Pausing and waiting till later in mid project, the recovery cost of that is sometimes as costly as the project up until that point, you know,
Right.
because you
So,
lose the resources or you lose the demand and you
mhm.
had to recreate everything, or things go stale. You've got to refactor a lot of stuff. It just, yeah, it's, I hate seeing the short-sighted stuff, but it happens more often than you would hope.
Well, it's like mowing your, 3/4 of your lawn, and you wait 2 weeks and it's been raining, and then you try to
Mm.
mow it again. And then the mower's bogged down, you
Yep.
can't, everything's jammed up. And then you realize, oh, wait, I forgot to get gas for the weed eater once you're done. And it's, it ends up being what normally
Yeah.
takes an hour to cut your yard. You're 3 hours in, you've disassembled your weed eater, and you're still not done. And
Like,
that's what that's what it's sometimes with these projects. Now, I have a question with you. So
yeah.
when I got my MBA, we were all I great experience. I was with some of the smartest people. Everybody in there was smarter than
Hmm.
I was, which was great. Um, we had a unique experience because we were all working for GE Aviation. So our corporate perspective on some of these um, topics was probably swayed in one way, but it made sense.
Sure.
We were at the time one of the largest corporations in the world. So
Yeah.
one of the interesting conversations we had was the what driving behavior within a corporation or company when it's publicly traded, and you're managing for the earnings call. So like every
Hmm.
3 months, you have to meet these deadlines and have these things change. And it seems like, okay, you've done all this strategic planning that has like a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan in it. But then come March, January to March, something goes wrong, like you said, and then the wheels fall off. So by the end of
Yeah.
the year, everyone's stressing out. Are we going to make the numbers? Oh, and by the way, by month 6 or month 8, they're asking for more of
Hmm.
whatever the metric that affects everyone's bonus is. I don't know. Every business is different, and you know. But what's interesting when you look at these smaller firms, they are able to say, okay, crap, we have a flat tire. Let's take a pause, put air in it, and we can still move down the road. Now, they might have to make adjustments for the next couple of months, but it like you're not everyone's running around with their hair on fire, but like
Yeah.
these corporations are. I mean, are you do you see that?
Yeah, it for sure. For sure. Well, I mean, you can even just look at how budget cycles work in some of these big companies, right? Where Q1, you've got all kinds of money, right? And then everybody's starting off these new things, pet
Yep.
projects,
Yep.
boom, you know, Q2 gets there and inevitably everybody's overspent, right? Because Q1 was great, right? And so Q2 goes into this austerity measures where, okay, gosh, we need to curb back spending, we need to slow back a bunch of things. Q3 is the dead zone, right? Where everybody's panicking, nobody thinks they have enough money to get through the end of the year.
Hmm.
Q4 comes and everybody has extra money now because
Yeah.
they didn't look at how the year panned out. It's like, if you just look at what we planned, we knew we were going to spend a lot here and a lot here, and just observe what that cycle looks like. Right now, you add in vacations. Now you add in a little bit of extra. Well, maybe our suppliers won't be able to deliver as fast as we thought they were. So spend gets put off into different quarters. Like, you have to understand what that looks like. And then you get to quarter four, and then it's like spend, 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 spend.
Right.
It's like use it or lose it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What
And
do you mean
then,
you can't order
yeah.
that item that canceled, but it takes 6 month lead time? It's December. Why can't we get it, 31st of December?
Yeah.
Right.
What are we going to do with all this
Right.
money that we
Yeah.
saved in Q2 and Q3?
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, it's very frustrating, right? Because it's hard
Right.
to get any traction in a big company. Whereas, to your point, looking at smaller companies where, well, and by no means are they a small company, but I look at something like
No.
Tesla, right?
Hmm.
Tesla is one of these companies where, and I think it shows that from the top down, you have to have a mentality that, the quarter by quarter earnings calls aren't as important as the overall, right? And
I
that's a very difficult thing because everybody's bonuses in big corporate are tied to
Yeah.
quarterly earnings. So it's it is as what I've seen is, as the companies become bigger, then the incentives turn much more towards the quarter by quarter earnings calls versus actual. It's more about that and less about the actual overall value to the business, right? And I think, and I don't know how you change that, but I think if you say, okay, instead of bonusing the CEO on quarter by quarter calls, right, the earnings, right, why don't we say that, okay, in long term, there are 3 to 5 initiatives that we need to get finished as a company, right? And we
Right.
say that these are the things we need to do. And we are going to bonus you on that 5-year thing, right? And then maybe we take incrementals, right? Okay, year 1, boom, your plan was that we were going to drop in productivity by this much. We didn't actually drop that much. We dropped a little bit less. So you're on target. So you get part of your bonus. Okay, we expected that. Year 2, more investment. So yeah, we expected it was going to go down. Okay, no problem. That's the plan. Everything looks like it's tracking. So you keep getting bonus. And then as you pick up, year 3, 4, and 5, okay, now we're starting to run. We're operating. We're going through the kinks. And
Mhm.
now, you're still doing the good job, right? So everything's going to plan, or maybe some things kind of fell off the rails, but you adjusted. Here's the new thing. And then you bonus based on that plan and the output of that plan versus just, oh, did our share price go up 3 cents or 5 cents this quarter? I think having more longer term initiative or more longer term incentives for leadership would help companies drive the better behavior moving forward, you know?
I would hope that that would do that, but we I I don't know. I feel like we live in a society where if you I don't know, stumble at just a little bit, all of a
Yeah.
sudden you are not going to make it. You will fail. Instead of looking at it in terms of a marathon, they look at it as a sprint. And if you don't come out of the, gates on fire, you're going to lose the race, or you're not even going to make it. So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
always, there's like 10 people, somehow financially involved, incentivized outside, at least, I've never been in a corporate Fortune 500 boardroom. So, what do I know? I was always the result, or had to go execute based on what was flowed down from those decisions to help
Right.
build the business, right? So that's my perspective. I wouldn't, I don't know what some of these CEOs that are making 15-30 million dollars, what they deal with in a day-to-day basis. I feel what decisions they have made, right? But when everything is but when you boil down to, okay, it's numbers on a spreadsheet. Did you make your quarterly numbers correct? That is what you're there to do.
Hmm.
It does not feel like how, when, they show in the movies that it's like the founder. So when you mentioned Tesla, I think Tesla will change if once Elon Musk is not there, or you know, one
Probably.
day
Yeah.
he will pass away, right? And those businesses will probably still be around. I think if the founder if once the founder's gone, I think it becomes a different ball game. So I think they will focus more on that, because it'll be whoever's in the chair, right? Or
Right.
whoever owns the biggest piece, that wants to make sure that all their investment makes money, because that's really all we focus on, right? It's not the
Yeah.
mission, it's not the product, it's not the fact that, in the case of net Tesla, they're with the leading electric EV out there. They have all the, everybody likes to use their chargers, and I think they
Hmm.
were driving the connector um, discussion. I mean, they're basically, um, not to get on the government, right? But we have a government that was mandated to bring high-speed internet to everybody, and then we had a guy literally shooting rockets into space, has now covered the entire planet.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that cost, but I don't think it cost as much as what we spent as taxpayers to get nobody hooked to the internet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which is crazy, because I know, you're from Kentucky. We have
Hmm.
places that you can barely even get four-wheelers to, and somehow we have dial-up internet to these some of these folks. Now,
Yeah.
I remember dial-up internet. You don't want that, but
Yeah.
I think if we can get telephones and satellite TV to some of these locations, I think we can figure out how to get internet. So apparently space
Sure.
works. So I
Well,
guess,
I
where am
mean,
I going
look,
at with that? It seems like we
they
don't
can.
we don't focus on what matters, as opposed to we started something and then we want the output. It's like, how you actually do have to get into how the sausage is made to make it efficient and effective, and you have to care about it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, we talked about this before we started recording. Part of what makes these types of companies successful. So Tesla, you look at Apple with Steve Jobs, right? You have Elon, you have Steve Jobs. When people invest, this is my perception, right? People invest in Tesla right now, or SpaceX, or something like that. They're investing because they generally believe in the vision of
Yes.
Elon,
Mhm.
similar to when they invested with Apple when Jobs was still alive, right? They invested on the vision. They believed in that person. They believed in the vision, you know,
Mhm.
and they believed that whatever happened, up or down, didn't matter, right? That person was going to, at the end of the race, deliver value to my investment, right?
Mhm.
So And I think you can kind of look at what happened to Apple post Steve Jobs when he passed away, right?
Yeah.
People don't invest in Apple anymore um, because they believe in the vision necessarily. They invest in it because it's a cash cow, right?
Mhm.
Well, how did it become a cash cow? Well, when Steve Jobs passed away, right? He was very much at the top, kind of controlling everything, at least from what I've heard. I didn't work at Apple, but this is what I've heard. But then they scrambled to be able to recreate what the output that Steve Jobs created. It's not necessarily based on vision anymore. It's more based on creating the outputs.
Yeah.
Staying with the status quo and maintaining the status quo of what they do, right? You haven't seen much out of Apple, in my opinion, that's really earth shattering or
Yeah.
groundbreaking like used to be. Like, and you could make the argument for the whatever the 3D vision thing. But I mean, realistically, that's Facebook led the charge on that one. They have the market share on that, in my opinion. And really, if you look at it's basically you take two iPhones and put them in front of your eyes, you know?
Yeah.
So is it cool? Yeah, probably. Is it like, driving the innovation? Because when you look at anything that Steve Jobs put out there as far as innovation and stuff like that, he built products that he wanted to improve, right?
Right.
And it was more driven by his fervor and his passion. And
Yeah.
now with the lack of Steve Jobs, they've had to productize it. They had to basically compartmentalize all the things that made Steve Jobs good, make them into departments in Apple. And now they are without that vision from that one person. Now they're going out into the market and comparing themselves against, okay, who's the best cell phone? Who's the best this? Who's the best that? And it's much more of a marketing and consumer products driven approach, like the textbook stuff that you and I studied in business school,
Mhm.
right? Versus just basically a crazy person with a vision who's unstoppable, right? And that's
Right.
what you see with Tesla also. And I would expect that the same thing would happen. And I'm sure, and I'm not, I can't even think of what GE was back in those days, right? But GE got to the king of the mountain somehow, right? And when
Yeah.
the founders of GE, I look same with like Henry Ford,
Mhm.
right? It's the same thing, right? When Henry Ford passed, it productized. Now it became a huge company. GE became a huge company. That's not what I'm saying, but that's, I think, when it converts into that cash cow mentality where now, with the lack of a true crazy person's vision, right?
Right.
We just now need to rely on how much profit we can make. And
Right.
that's, a
Because I
different thing.
think those leaders, they didn't, the leaders that come later didn't, there's the quote, you can't have a testament without a test. So, the founder or the person that really pushed it to the next level did all the took all the exams so that then he or she could talk about how they got there, right? And then once they
Right.
get there, somebody just maintains it. So
Hmm.
I feel sometimes that some of these companies, a lot of the larger ones, they were just, polishing the brass on the Titanic. They're just waiting for it to sink one day. They're
Yeah.
trying to get to New York without hitting an iceberg. And um, they'll shut off this company or they'll add this piece to it, thinking it'll grow it. You'll see a change in the stock price. I mean, I'm, I was on at a call earlier today. We were just talking about um, it was Raytheon, and I couldn't remember who bought them, and then UTC, and I think
Hmm.
they own Pratt and Whitney, and then now it's RTX, which it's just this behemoth, right, of all
Right.
these businesses, right, and it's hard to keep track of who owns who anymore. Um, but it I don't know how. You can't AI yourself out of this problem, I don't think, right? You can't,
No.
you don't, there's not, I mean, most places do not have enough engineers. And if they do, they don't have the I guess appetite, at least in my opinion, to, keep that core group, some graybeards, and some middle tier folks, and then the entry level, and just train, and then you keep them trained, because you and I didn't go to speed school and learn how, um, well, in your case, how oil and gas worked, right? There wasn't an
We didn't
oil and
have
gas
petrol, right?
class,
Yeah.
right? I mean, right? We didn't, I didn't learn how, when I was at GE, I didn't learn how jet engines were built, right? I don't know
Right.
anything about that. I learned the science and aspects of it. You don't learn that, right? There's
Right.
and I and you have to learn that on the job if you're not doing co-ops, or you go into an industry that's similar, so you pick up those necessary skills.
Hmm.
And these are the technical pieces. This isn't just how to communicate and um, you know drive a point forward, and do it in a manner that is collaborative. There's these other set of skills that you don't learn. You don't get taught them. You have to learn them and have to
Yeah.
see good examples of them. Now, I've always had good examples of leaders. I've had some poor leaders, but I haven't had one of those, thankfully, in probably 15 years. So I was very fortunate when at L3 Harris. I saw some exceptional leaders there, that the transition. I got bits and pieces from them, and then when you add that to um, you know interacting with your peers, and I don't know, read a book once in a while or listen to a good
Yeah.
podcast. I mean, you you can add on to that. I mean, um, there's some great resources, and now I mean, you have everything at your fingertips. There's more information in your pocket than anywhere else in the world. I mean, there's just so much uh, capability that we have potential to do and help and learn more. But you have to have that foundation. But
Yeah.
you have to, like, yeah, yeah,
Well, you know what else is missing, honestly, that I don't see a lot of anymore. It's hard to find. It's hard to find is, we're like, it's passion. It's the passion for the thing that
yeah.
you're doing, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times it seems like I meet people who are starting their careers, kind of coming out of school, and they got into engineering or they got into business school because that was the thing to do, right? And it wasn't. Well, here's what I mean. You remember when we were in speed school, um, the people who were the most passionate about. So let's look at computer engineering, for example. I can tell you where the most passionate computer engineering students were. They weren't necessarily the ones getting all the A's on all the tests. They weren't
Right.
necessarily all the ones who were, you know, the the popular shining star people. They were the guys and girls who were down in the slug lab. You remember the slug
Mhm.
lab?
Yeah, yeah.
Those folks, and they would
It smelled
spend,
interesting there.
yeah. I love my ACM slug brethren, but man, they were like, if you wanted to figure out how something actually worked,
Oh
or
yeah,
some or
yeah,
somebody who could figure it out, like the person, when you had a problem, if you like, particularly network security, if somebody hacked you, you don't go to the professor, you go to the slug lab,
yeah,
because those are the folks who are the passionate ones. They're the ones who study this, even if they don't get graded, if they don't have to. They're the ones who disagree with the professors,
yeah.
because they have their own perspective, because they're studying this and they're on top of it. Same thing with the ME lab. You remember the race car?
Yes,
That was
yeah.
awesome,
Though,
right?
well, that's what I was more familiar with.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys were building stuff with broken tools and all kinds of stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
it's 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 laughable when I see some of these other schools, and that when they have they have a lot better labs now that we ever had. Now
Oh,
we didn't
sure.
know any
Yeah.
different,
Ours were
right?
junk.
Right. But we seem to be able to learn very well. And but you learn by breaking stuff. You learn by, in our case, welding something wrong, or I don't know, using the wrong material, or
Yeah.
breaking the machine and then having to fix it because you don't want anyone to know you broke it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That type of stuff, right? Again, right? I guess it goes back to, if we you have to let people fail to learn, because you don't ever remember the spelling words you got right. You remember the ones you got wrong. So
Hmm.
if you don't, we got to get away from that. And I don't, and if we're doing real time checks on everything, we were talking about corporations. If you're looking at real time checks on everything, you can't grow those businesses effectively, or keep them running by doing that. Now I get it. You have to keep your eye on the ball. I can hear some of the people that some of my mentors in the past. I get it. But there's sometimes you got to sometimes let that engine flutter, because sometimes it
Hmm.
will start and stay running.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will have flutters. That's going to happen. Um, it's just frustrating sometimes, because a lot of these corporations, and then these businesses, a lot of people depend on them. A lot of people have spent a lot of time, and they have a lot of sweat equity in them. No,
Hmm.
and the unfortunate part is, the corporation is not a person. They don't care, right? And you're just an
Yeah.
employee. You have to realize that. That's why I laughed when you said you went from you left and stopped being a W-2 employee. And I was like, that I don't know. I don't forget what book or what podcast it was where they talked about that. But it does change your perspective on everything, where, if I don't do my job, it doesn't get done, right? I mean, I'm a small firm, right? It's not like
Hmm.
I got like 1,000 people to support me if I show up sick, right? Um, these you just got to be, and you have to learn. You have to learn as you go, because it's not. Um, you can't be successful without some failures. I mean,
Yeah.
when you were talking about Apple, for example, during that time frame would have been during that transition. I mean, Apple stock was $6,
Hmm.
and I think now that stock, if you would have bought then, there's a nice chart somewhere that people keep a good tally on. That would have been a great investment if we would have put our co-op money in Apple stock during that
Yeah.
time. I think we would be probably somewhere in Florida on a nice boat fishing.
That's yeah. Yeah.
So,
When I worked at Raytheon, I co-opted at Raytheon. I think I
oh,
told you.
nice.
Yeah, and company stock then, I think it was into teens, you know, and I was allowed to buy some, but then since I wasn't a full-time employee, they figured it out and they made me sell it back. So I couldn't
Yeah,
keep it, you
right.
know. But it's like, man, same thing. It's like buying it then, but that was when Raytheon was much smaller, it
Yeah,
was aircraft integration. It was like a whole completely different side of Raytheon. And then, I mean, things get bigger, things get split up and get
yeah,
acquired by bigger people and, the whole thing. But it's just, it becomes that money multiplier, which is
yep.
good for the investor. Was it really good for Raytheon? I don't know,
Right.
so
They got their fingers in everything. So I think it probably helps them, acquiring this is my gut, right? It helps them with other bigger jobs, right?
yeah,
It's better to have the whole aircraft carrier, or a big part of it, than just, the doorknobs. I mean, it's like, those are the ones you want. I mean, those are the ones you can, make sure the lights stay on in the factories.
yeah.
Those are big jobs, and then you win the smaller jobs. So, I get it, but it's just, I uh, I wish it was better, I guess, and
Yeah,
I
well,
don't know
and
how to make it better.
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to, especially because you and I play now with really large companies, right? And so, just the perspective, like being independent consultants in that space, I feel like it gives us a different, like a different view on how you can optimize. Cause when you were, well, I can, for example, when I was, not an independent consultant, I could only see things from a certain vantage point. Right.
Mhm.
But even just having experience going to some other different clients, maybe that were smaller or larger, right?
Right.
For me, it was going to other smaller clients and then coming back to a larger client. It's like, hey, you know, I know you think this is the only way to do this, but there are smaller folks out there doing a really good job of this elsewhere. And there's something that you can learn from that, right? And a lot of it, I don't know about your business, but a lot of it, what I see is just being able to like strip out bureaucracy. It's like a lot of these things we're just getting in our own way as large organizations with the amount of red tape that you have to, if one of the jokes we had as, consultants when I was still working for a larger firm was, you know, we had 15 people on a meeting. It's like, how much is this meeting costing the client?
Oh,
Right.
exactly.
You look
Right.
at, you look at
Yeah.
our charge rates. This is $100,000 meeting. We better get $100,000 worth of value out of this thing, you know?
Yep.
And it's kind of a, an anecdotal thing, but it's true that, hey, there a lot of these meetings to have a meetings to prep for a meeting, just as an off example, or documentation to direct how you write the documentation, like these types of things where we're trying to control the outputs so finely that we're putting more money into defining what it is than actually doing the definitions, right? And it's like if we just stripped out a lot of the stuff that's not super useful, hey, we can actually create value by streamlining, or we can create value. And you wouldn't see that unless you as a consultant go out and see other folks and bring that to a new client,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There we get there's too many meetings. There's also a lot of once it seems like there's a point where the business goes to everybody then has to sign it or whatever it is. And
yeah,
it'll sit there and it'll take like weeks, days, months, and then you there by the time it gets to the final person, it's unless somebody is pushing it, like no one wants to sign it and be wrong because
correct.
they'll go point to that during their, I don't know, their performance review or
You
whatever.
just want somebody to blame. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
but then the problem is no one reads what they sign, so they sign it and then they forget
mm,
about it, or they'll get the email message, or they'll get the phone call, however the process that the business works, and
mm,
they're so busy they don't get to it. Then when they finally get to it, I'm not sure they really read it, and then there
yeah.
may have been there may have been a mistake, right? Well,
Yeah.
the 10th person caught the mistake, not the previous nine,
Yeah.
so
And
then
now,
it
yeah,
starts
you
all over
start the
again.
whole progress. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, well, and that's and I've always that is you bring up signatures, and that is like a one of the things that kind of drove me crazy. It's everybody approves of it, right? So had an example, had a client where we had 6 different divisions across across different countries who had agreed, and we'd spent a lot of time getting folks to agree on a standard. Okay, this is the direction we're going to take. Everybody wants to buy into this thing. Perfect. You know, everybody signs off on it, on a phone call, head of department XYZ. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, we're green light. We're go. So we get down, we start going, and yeah, I won't name the department, but you can kind of probably read between the lines. Some department somewhere gets the decision and says, well, nobody's actually signed it. It's like, well, we have all of these approvals. Well, nobody's actually written out and signed it. And so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, but by what mechanism do we need to print it and physically mail it to everybody, e-sign it? And then they said, well, we don't know. It just needs to be signed. Like, well, okay, so you're not going to define how it gets signed. I have emails of all of these people saying we approve. Does that not count as no? It needs to be signed. So then it's a month to figure out, do we need to get Adobe Sign? Do we get DocuSign? Who's going to pay for this? What, like, and it's like everybody already approved. Everybody wants to move forward. The budget is approved. Let's go. Like, but it's just this one thing, the signature. It's like, okay, we derailed a project for a month because you need a physical signature, but it's a digital signature. So if that's digital, why doesn't their email approval with their name and signature, like email signature, count as the same thing? What are we doing here?
Right. Because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. It's like a
Yeah.
moving target. You never know.
Yeah.
I, you know, and the best was, you have these 14 or 15 signatures, and some of these people breathe air that, you know, I'm not breathing, right? That's up in the upper atmosphere. And then when
Yeah.
there's an issue, their DNA is all over this crime scene, and somehow they had nothing to do with it. They're like, "What are you
Yeah.
talking about?" They have complete amnesia. I mean, these are
Yeah.
and you know,
Yeah.
I don't
This is
know.
like
I
a
don't know how to
happy
get
hour
away from
talk.
that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's like you know, yeah. I have some stories on that one. And
I'm
so,
sure.
but it's always it's getting the job done, right? I'll never forget. I got reprimanded um, because I get a phone call um, from a VP that was filling in for another VP that was on vacation, and there was an
Hmm.
issue with our product that was in a test rig
Hmm.
at I'm being very vague here on purpose, at an
Yeah.
Air
Yeah. Yeah.
Force base, okay, and
Hmm.
they had an issue, and I knew it wasn't our product, but I had to go down there. I can't. When you say it has this particular issue, that's not something you can do, remotely from Cincinnati.
Right.
So I'll never forget. I told my manager at the time, there's an issue. I have to go and do XYZ at this location. Okay. I called Lauren. I said, I'm driving. I'm going to pick up a bag. Can you throw some stuff in the bag? And
Hmm.
I'll pick it up and I'm on my way. I get down there. It's about a 5 hour drive. I'm on the phone with the VPs that called me to tell them, give them a status, right? I felt like that's the right thing to do. This is what's happening. This is what caused it and everything. Okay, thank you for doing that. And then I get back in my car and I drive home. I get back to the office. I get called in. Why didn't you rent a car to go down there? I'm like, well, I didn't have time. I said, because they didn't want to pay my mileage to go down there. I'm like, fine, don't pay me my
Really?
mileage. I was like,
Wow.
when somebody's a VP at this particular company, they're not like a regular VP. They're, I mean, anointed by God themselves, right?
Yeah.
These are
Hmm.
people you make sure that when they call and they found your line at your cubicle, you execute on what they asked for, and I did that. And then,
Yeah.
you know, why
So
did
yeah.
why
So
didn't you
they
rent
didn't
a
want to
car? What
pay.
happens if you would have gotten in an accident? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, the same
Yeah.
thing if I would have gotten in an accident if I left work. I mean, this is all nonsense, and this is the
Yeah.
type of stuff that, like, again, this was years ago, and I'm telling this story today in 2025, and I know it happens today at
Yeah.
companies.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, exactly. So then, like, the subtext here is, so you're not going to pay $300 or $500 worth of reimbursement, but I just saved maybe $1 billion worth of account. Like,
Right. It
like,
was, yeah, it was
seriously.
a, yeah, right. It was a
Yeah.
significant test.
Oh, that's my friend Heather. Hi, Heather. I didn't realize it's all the same bridge. Hi.
How's it
This
going?
is, so we're
Well,
recording.
how come I
Yeah.
can see her screen, I can't see yours?
I can
Oh,
see
I don't
you,
know.
but I mean,
I
if
don't
you
know.
can
Can you
see
see
me,
me,
why would you
Heather?
want to see JP?
Oh, Michael Driver. That's amazing. I don't know what's wrong with your computer. Let me
Yeah,
introduce
it's
you.
me. I told you it was me. I don't know. I did
Yeah.
something.
So Heather Isley, Michael Driver. Michael Driver is
Oh, well,
one of
it's
my
good to
old
meet
buddies
you.
from engineering school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Heather Isley, a buddy of mine from Onica,
Something like that.
4 years ago, I'd say. We both found each other at this kind of semi startup, and
Nice.
kind of met up there. Yeah.
Great.
So we were just talking. I don't know how I'm going to now mix this recording in, but we were just talking about corporate craziness, as far as sometimes big corporations can be short-sighted in and not see the big picture. So Michael was just telling a story. He works for background. Michael is an independent also, and is servicing defense. So, which is interesting to Heather actually, because her husband is very deep into.
Yeah, no, I got out of government defense a
sorry.
long time ago when I started.
Yeah. But so the context here is that Michael had to go down, fix an issue 5 hours away. Basically got a call, decided, hey, this is a big enough issue. He got a call from like a very super high level VP, and he said, okay, I'm going down, I'm going to fix this. Gets on the phone with the VP, smooths things over, gets to the site, boom, sees the thing, fixes this thing or diagnoses it, whatever. Everybody's happy, handshakes and everything, drives back, gets back. Corporation he works for at the time will not reimburse his miles because he did not rent a car. He drove his own car instead. Have you heard anything like this before, Heather?
Yeah, right. Like for me, it tends to be around internal
Yeah.
technology processes. So why does it work that way in Salesforce? Does it have to work that way in Salesforce? No, then why does it? Well, just because it's the way it's always been, and nobody's had significant enough pain to fix it yet. So it tends to be where I run into things like that. How'd you fix it? Did you
Yeah. So more intros. Heather is also an independent, as a side gig, corporate coach for Agile.
And I think that
right?
that whole mindset, like I'm certain if JP is talking to on his podcast, it's probably something that we share, right? Is like this process thinking where it's just certain levels of waste just make us crazy, right?
Well, yeah, you end up spending half your day trying to figure out how to get around this barrier that's all the company's doing, right? It's not the actual issue you're trying to solve. It's trying to remove a barrier
Right.
that
Right.
it's
Like,
self-imposed.
what do you think, Michael? Do you think it would have
Yeah.
been more expensive for your company if they had, if you had rented a car or if you'd driven your own?
So this was very early in my career. It would have been fair. I don't know how many millions of dollars it would have been if this was like would have like I didn't answer the phone, or I didn't go down there and work with them. I don't know how. Yeah, yeah, and it was like I want to say it was $200 in mileage. I mean, we're talking nothing, and I just will never forget that, because I drove home all through the night to get home, and then drive in the next morning just to get. I mean, these are things that you learn in your career, that you're like, I will never treat somebody that way, you know. Um, and
Yeah.
I used to share that with my old team. It's like you just don't. I never would want to be treated like that, so you don't treat other people like that, especially if they went out of their way to do something right. Now, I get it, not paying. I understand rules, but it's like it. If this was done today, right, it would have been like, well, you really shouldn't have rented the car. So we're going to figure out how not to do that again, but not, you
You're
shouldn't
just
have done it.
gonna, thank you for
You're going to be
saving
in
us.
trouble
You're going to
type
eat the cost.
conversation.
Ah,
Yeah. No,
and
there was no thank you. Yeah. I was a nuisance conversation, I think, that particular day. So,
so
Yeah.
which was fine.
Well, that gets into a whole different thing, though, right? That you. So first off, a company. Not this is JP's perfect world, right? A company should deliver value to the client, right? Number one. Number two, a company should recognize what is delivering the value to the client, right? It's not just the product that you're buying, but it's the people around it that deliver that product, right? Like, unless you're a one-man solo shop making, wooden rifles and whittling them out yourself, like, there are other people helping you with this effort, and you got to take care of your client, but you got to take care of those people also, because they are a representation of your company. And the more you take care of them, the better off the more loyal they're going to be, the better work they're going to put in, theoretically, right?
You're only good as good as your team.
I heard an interesting podcast this morning where there was an entrepreneur who wasn't a solo anymore, but had started, kind of filling a niche for his day job. And one of the traps he fell into was actually not treating himself very well at first, right? So many indies fail, right? Or never make the leap to being full-time, right? Yet. But soon we'll get there.
Soon, Heather, soon.
But he made the mistake of reinvesting everything into his own business and not paying himself well enough. And when his first few attempts failed, he had nothing to show for all of that time and all of that effort. And I think when you think about that for yourself, you to your point, Michael, you have to think about that for the people that are working for you too, right? Like, what are they investing in your business, and are they fairly compensated for that? Do they feel like they've got the backing to make the right decisions, or are you really just looking at them as a body fulfilling a role? And I think there's a big difference in what you pay people like that, right?
I remember a conversation. Well, it's been a while back. So when Louisville Geek was kicking off, so.
Oh yeah, I was around those days.
So, but I forget what stage they were in, and you knew when if you were around Bob, he was going to do something great, right?
Yeah.
So, and I remember him having this conversation. He's like, it's not the stress of always the job. It's the stress that you have all of these people dependent on you to do your job right, so they actually get a paycheck. And that always stuck with me. He's got a couple zingers that I keep chambered occasionally that he spoke. I don't know if he read it, made it up, or whatever he did. But
I don't know.
He's always
Bobby Bailey is very witty. Yeah.
Right. Well, his wit got us in trouble a lot, but I'll leave that alone.
Yeah, it did. So for context.
Yeah.
So for context, Heather, so Bobby Bailey, mutual friend of Michael's and mine, he started a company in Louisville called Louisville Geek. It was basically a direct competitor to Geek Squad, okay? Started with him and Patrick Mann in their garage, right?
Yeah, they worked at a company together, then they
split off.
Their own thing.
Yeah. So this is how I found, so they had hired one guy, Rob Deal, and this was my very first foray into contracting. Okay. So Bobby is a year ahead of me, in college. Right. And so he graduated, he, goes on, works for a while. We end up meeting up and reconnecting at a bar, watching a basketball game. Michael, you'll remember the Granville very well. It
has windows now, I see.
Yeah, no, it's terrible that they've classed up the joint. Actually, the pool table doesn't lean anymore. There's the jukebox works. It's awful. It's terrible.
Everyone's initials or roll numbers still etched in the wall in the back?
I think they painted over them actually, because there's artwork and stuff up there now. Yeah, so
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, I don't go there anymore just because they've ruined the luster of our old bar. Right. But anyway, he and I caught up at this bar, and we were just catching up, oh, like, what are you doing now? It's like, oh, well, I have this company that, we're essentially repairing PCs and doing all of this stuff. And I said, really? Well, I'm doing contract web work and, basically business level IT. He said, I have work for you. And I was like, I have work for you because I don't want to do the spyware crap anymore. And so that's where my first 1099
really
came from
cool.
Bobby Bailey in Louisville Geek. And that was eons ago. Golly, that was.
He's,
I mean, Louisville Geek's a multi-million-dollar business now. Yeah, they have. I think they have maybe 6 or 8 partners, and they have probably 30 people or 20 people, something like that. It's big.
I think it's more than that.
Is it? Yeah, it's because they went. They went web development, application development, business IT, the Geek Squad level IT, so residential. They have all kinds of businesses now.
He was several candidates run their network all their emails together so that all the BlackBerry, back when everyone was on BlackBerries.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And I want to say at one time he had to he may have had 2 candidates that were going in the same election, maybe. It was both parties. I mean, it was wild. It's like, how'd you land that? He's like, I don't know, and he's like helping these people. It was really cool. It was really cool watching him blow that up. And then I moved, so I didn't get to see I saw the early stuff. I didn't see the later stuff that I'm sure he has a lot of stories to tell.
Well, what set them apart, in my opinion, and I think this is going to be useful for all of us here, is that the thing that made my business fail, in a sense, right? I wasn't gaining traction, had a master's in engineering, computer engineering, no less, and was, that to me was a very marketable thing. People would want that, right? People with, somebody with a master's level education working on their computers, like that would be something that I thought it would speak for itself. They spent a lot of money in marketing, and I completely blew that off, right? And they were just bringing in clients, bringing them in. They didn't know what to do with all these clients. And I had maybe 3 or 5 clients at the time. I couldn't grow. And it was like looking at how much money they were spending on marketing. They had they bought into the geek thing, right?
Yep.
So
Glasses.
Michael, you remember the glasses? They had these little,
yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So they would go to their business cards were these paper glasses, and they put and they would go everywhere and leave these paper glasses on the tables and just their black eyeglasses made out of paper. And it had basically their contact info. And it was, that campaign that really kicked them off. People had those glasses forever. I'd see them, all over the place, and
I want to say he won an award for that one. An award for that one.
Most innovative marketing or something like that. Yeah.
I still have it. He gave it to me when I was still living off of Dixie Highway. I had this yard sign, and it was during one of our congressional campaigns that was it was crazy. Well, he had this yard sign advertising the business, and it was I'll send you a picture of it. I have it. I have it hanging.
I had the yard sign.
You have it too? I still look at it. I laugh. I actually have it right next to my boys when they move to high school. They get the welcome so and so to St. Henry or whatever, and I have them next to those because I'm like I can't get rid of this. I send it to him every once in a while, just remind him of his ridiculousness, but it worked.
Yeah, it worked. Well, no, so it was maybe late 90s, early 2000s. Imagine that, Heather, the election signs when you vote, it would always be this thing that said vote and then the candidate, right? And then it would just be color coded. And there was it was always red, white, and blue, right? White background, red and blue lettering. And so it would vote for Senator XYZ or vote for Congressman blah, blah, blah. And then so they put out a sign that said, vote Louisville Geek for your IT people.
Yeah,
It
that's what
was
it was. Yep.
genius. And they
Yes.
put it everywhere.
Yep.
And like every house, they would just put them, you know, down. I mean, everywhere in Louisville had them. And it became a little bit of a joke. It's like, okay, well, I'm just taking this one. This is who I'm voting for, kind of thing. And then there was another campaign in Louisville to honor all of the, I guess, the Illuminati of Louisville. Like,
I didn't know that was a thing. The
it's like
Illuminati.
Muhammad Ali's Louisville.
Yeah, this was a great one.
Yeah.
This was a great
Right.
one.
So, but then it's like Muhammad Ali's from Louisville, right? So Muhammad Ali's Louisville, right? And they would have this picture of Muhammad Ali, and then they would have other people who are, you know, the Mayor Jerry's Louisville or whatever, right? So then I don't. They actually got asked to take this down, but they put a big picture of Bobby on it, and it had to have been. It was the side of a building, and I don't know how much they paid for this thing, but it said Bobby's or Louisville Geek instead of Bobby's Louisville. It said Louisville Geek, and it just had his picture on it, and it was the nerdiest picture you could find of Bobby Bailey. It just fit the geek thing to a T, and it was just like such a play off of this huge marketing campaign that the city was trying to do to make Louisville look better, you know.
Yeah.
And then he just
thousands of people drove past it every day and saw
So what we've learned is that, you know, oh, sorry, Michael. So what we've learned is that
no,
master
go ahead.
marketing is a thing, and that, you know, you always into that. But
it is.
Going back to
is.
something else that you guys were talking about. You were talking about how some of these guys would pair up, and then they'd break off and do their own things. Or JP, you ended up just having a conversation with a friend, and you guys started sharing your books of business. So how much of that is like how you guys build your books? Are you guys working together? Are you guys sharing, hey, I think I might have an opportunity for you?
For me, yes. I mean, I like if I so doing this kind of thing, having chats to catch up with. I haven't talked to Michael. Gosh, we were talking like probably 20 years since we left because
it's been a long time.
You know, and I saw that he was independent, and I was like, oh, I got to talk to you, right? Yeah. And for me, I wanted to do this, right, to talk, number one, catch up, because it could be, hey, I may have something that he could do, he could have something I could do, or it's also good to have that in your back pocket because you never know what conversation you're going to be in. It's like, I can't do, I don't do aerospace consulting. I don't do that kind of thing, or government consult, that kind of sector. But it's really cool when you can say in a conversation, like, oh, hey, I have somebody for you, right? Because you're adding value to that relationship without actually asking for any money, and so the more you can do that, the more, I guess, capital, like some sort of capital you build up with that person, so that you help them, that hopefully someday they'll think about, hey, you know what, JP does this type of consulting, so maybe I can insert JP here, right? Whether it's Michael or the person that I introduced to Michael, right? Yeah. Those types of things. And I feel like that for me, that was a blind spot up until like 2 years ago. And so the idea of connecting people together and just without even really any financial incentive to do so, other than just to, like, hey, I may know somebody that can help you.
Right? It's social.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So to me, I think that's part of building it. Maybe, that opens up networks for you later, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
And so where I worked at, a lot of people left, and they all have gone to different companies, or they're doing their own things. We still see each other and talk about things, and we still do stuff together, both socially and professionally. It's interesting how it happens. And then I see JP having a great interview on, I think it was on LinkedIn, and I'm like, this is great. This is great work. This is spot on, really. So. Yeah. Oil and gas, I know zero about it. I watched Landman, so that means I'm an expert. So, but it's I could think of somebody that knows somebody, or I might have a contact that he might need. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows anymore? I mean, we're a well-connected world anymore. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Heather to pull the trigger and go full time, like do the full independent thing. And Michael's only been doing it for
How do you
a
like it,
year and
Michael?
change
Is
now,
it
right?
everything you'd hoped for?
Yeah. Oh, it's every day's a learning experience. You fail here, you're successful there. You fail some more. I just you appreciate having
Hmm.
a corporate structure behind you, and then you don't miss it at all. I mean, it's you know, it's frustrating waiting. You know, there's waiting, and communicate and do a contract, negotiation, and then you try to like wait some more and get some feedback, and it's
Signatures on
um
sound. Leave it
and
as
then you deal with
written.
the government. They're also very interesting to deal with. It's fascinating how these are the things you don't see sometimes because you work it and then you go to something else. So and then you're dealing with a client, and then you're trying to do this, and then everything happens all at once because you're a you know small group. You can't really execute it unless you do it right sometimes. So it's I don't know. I don't it's
Yeah.
frustrating, and I like it all at the same
Well,
time.
and you always
So it
know
doesn't
whether or
really
not
make
your
sense.
company is going to reimburse you for your mileage.
Right.
That's
You know,
right.
exactly. I don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, oh man, my thing, and Heather knows this because I bitch about this a lot. Chasing people for money. Chasing people for money has been the bane of my existence for the past 6 months.
So how is that?
And
I wanted to ask you,
gosh,
JP,
that's
when we were next going to speak anyway. How have you not outsourced that yet? Hire a professional pesterer, right?
so yeah, yeah, but yes, also, but also I don't know that how much would I have to pay somebody
You
to
read the 5 minute
to
work
do
week,
that,
right? Like
right?
the or whatever. Isn't that the name of the book? 5 minute work week.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's just that the fact that I have AI
That's
generate the
fair.
emails
You have
already,
outsourced it.
it's
You
not,
have outsourced it. It's not to a
you know,
person.
I,
Yeah.
other than sending it, right? And then I just have to live with the frustration of, okay, they're late again, late 10 days, 15 days, 150 days,
No
however
problem. We're an
late
enormous firm. We
they are.
can.
So. No, I think the one thing that the one technique I am going to employ now moving forward is I'm going to put a flat late fee on there.
Yeah.
That okay, if you're late, due on this date, and if you're late by 30 days or something like that, then fee gets attached. I don't know if that actually does anything because it's never really negotiated in the contract, but at least it's like the beware of dog sign in the yard.
Well,
So.
you could put it on your. I guess, are you doing it through PO, or you have a contract vehicle?
So I do go through a contract vehicle, but I could just easily put it on my POs also because I have a contract vehicle that outlined, the annual structure of the contract, but then each month I send invoices. So on those invoices, I could just tack that on there,
So something I these this other company I've run into, they had an ingenious way to make sure, because they do a lot more engineering support, that
Mhm.
if you don't pay, all the work that was done is now their intellectual property, and it's built in the
Oh,
contract. And I could, I'm hearing this, and I'm like, did they even read the contract? And he's like, no, it's very cut and dry. If they don't pay, like if they're 60 days late, it becomes ours. And I'm like,
that's
that's
amazing.
awesome. Because some of these companies, they think that they can wait and pay you at the end of the quarter because they want to
Yeah.
make sure their
Mhm.
cash is right. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
whole quarterly earnings call to
Mhm.
Yeah.
kung fu that they
And
do.
meanwhile, you're losing all
Yeah,
the
I might do that.
interest on that money, and you're sucking up the interest on the credit cards that you're
Yeah,
floating, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, if I had to pay 20% on a credit card, I don't, whatever, APR. Okay, well, I'll make it a 25%.
Yeah,
Just pass it on to
that's
them.
one way to do it.
So,
Hmm.
I don't know. Anyway, let's see. I don't know, Michael. I didn't realize it was going to merge all of us together. So sorry about that. But
No
I
worries,
did
it's been
want
great.
to. But I do want to give you the opportunity to say at least what type of clients you're looking for. How can we, help? Who's your perfect client? If you had to say that, there's a perfect client out there, this is what they would need you for. How long would they need you? That kind of thing.
I mean, I guess an ideal client would be a privately held firm that wants to expand their business offerings. Maybe they currently already have, they're, the assumption is they're already well established. They want to enter into either new markets or they want to get involved in some of these new programs. I mean, for example, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's going to have to be a lot of things going on with the shipbuilding industry. There are,
Mm-hmm.
what does this in these new programs like the F-47? I know if you remember when the F-35 came out, everybody and their brother somehow had something either supporting or on those aircraft. I imagine the same thing was going to be with the F-47. There's always going to be some system, some widget, something that needs to be developed or put on there. But that's not to say that there's not new land vehicles. There's no other stuff. So anyway, what I'm getting at is there's a lot of new opportunities for these smaller mid-sized firms that have been doing a great job for the last several decades of just churning out great product, quality product that they want to grow and move on. So I mean, they're out there. You don't know their names. You probably drive past them every day, but
Mm-hmm.
they've been keeping their head down, doing their job and supporting their customer, but they need a little extra help. What does that take? I mean, 6 months, year, 2 years. Some of these, the reason why some of these would be longer is because if you've ever dealt with the government, they are as slow as molasses. You remember the problem? You remember when Dr. Tyler did the problem about the great molasses flow? Remember that one?
I don't remember that one. Refresh our
Oh,
memory here.
so I think it was in Cal 1 or 2. We had to do some kind of formula. He thought it was hilarious to
Of
do
course
this
you
big,
did.
right, this molasses thing. I think I was late to class that day, and he saw me. Um,
Okay.
but no, it's like that's how they work, right? I mean, no one
Mm-hmm.
meant to make a decision, and of course, you add in all the stuff that's going on now with the shakeup in the DoD. I know there's a new executive order on procurement that should help smaller firms. It should. We'll see. I'm hoping it does because
Mm-hmm.
they're slow, and that affects everybody because no company wants to invest on a product that they might be able to sell to them. I mean, it's
Right.
nonsense. And then they get mad. I'm getting on my soapbox here. They get mad because there's not product out there for them to
Mm-hmm.
buy. And then the supplier gets mad because they no one meant to make a decision on what they actually want. So like
Yeah.
both of them are standing there with their hands in their pocket, looking at each other like, who moves first? And it's just it's crazy. No industry, I think other industry operates that way. And because normally the company would develop something that's needed because they see a
Mm-hmm.
need and they put it out. Now it may not sell or not. I mean, have you ever heard of a Zune? Right? I think
Oh
that
yeah.
somebody tried to make that, but we all have iPods now. So the defense is the same way. No one can just build an airplane and try to sell it to them anymore. They need
Yeah.
the requirements to come down, and they need a potential purchase order or a program to charge to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, cool. Well, if I hear of them, and if you're out there, if you're watching and you're out there, you need Michael Driver.
yes,
So
this was great.
reach out.
Irish strategies. We'd appreciate helping whoever needs help.